Hello again. It's Mark Luke Carrier welcoming you to my very messy office. As I often say, getting messier by the moment. And today is the fifth installment of a reading from an unpublished novel that I have written tentatively called FAKES. Now, in this chapter, we find our hero, Mr. Fanshawe, being interviewed or meeting for the first time his boss, Sybil Vance, who is a lady who is the boss of the Alger and Elizabeth Paddox Museum of Art and Antiquities in the town of San Dementia, California. Without further ado, I shall begin. I identified myself to the receptionist, and within minutes a woman came clicking on her heels through the expansive lobby. She held out her hand to shake mine. "Dr. Sybil Vane," she said. She was one of those people with an air of unmistakable authority. Had I walked into the Alger and Elizabeth Paddox Museum of Art and Antiquities without knowing a thing about its administrative hierarchy, I would easily have identified Dr. Vane as the head lady. She was dressed elegantly, but soberly, in a dark blue Chanel suit. She sported her hair in a fashionable cut, and her makeup was effective but subtle. Everything about her said power. She led the way to her office. "Please forgive the mess," she said, as she walked briskly. "We're still a bit topsy-turvy." The official opening of the new museum complex was not for a few weeks. Crates that I suspected held priceless artwork filled vast exhibition halls, while museum workers busied themselves around them. Other workers were putting the final touches to the decor, filling the building with the distinctive new building odors of fresh cement and wet paint. "Our old buildings are being transformed into temperature-controlled warehousing facilities," she said. "We have so much inventory, and it just keeps on coming." I was puzzled. Dr. Vane explained. "The endowment left by the late Alger and Elizabeth Paddox carries a proviso. Other than board-approved administrative costs and capital investments, like this new campus, we cannot invest a penny of it for the future. Most of the accrued interest in any given fiscal year must be spent on the acquisition of new works. Every penny." I thought the museum was a voracious beast with an insatiable appetite for art, more and more art. My God, how? She answered with a wry smile. "It's not easy." Dr. Vane had not quite settled into her new office yet, and her secretary busied himself transferring files from boxes into cabinets. She asked him to leave, and that led me to a large perspex-domed maquette of the museum complex, or campus, as she seemed to prefer. "Here," she said, pointing at a model building, "will be the Renaissance section. And here the modern art exhibit. And here," she turned to me and smiled, "the works on paper building." The building she designated with her pen was considerably bigger than the entire Home Chumley Museum. Just to make sure I wasn't dreaming, I asked, "The whole structure for nothing but works on paper?" She nodded. 9,000 square feet of exhibition space on 3 floors, plus an underground complex for restoration. And even at that, we won't have enough room for our entire collection. You do realize how big our collection is, don't you?" "Of course," I answered, having no idea how big the collection was. I could only imagine it was the world's biggest, like everything else in America. After sitting at her desk and covering more museum minutiae, I couched a query in diplomatic terms. I asked her why she'd included me in her list of candidates, not wanting to appear too surprised at being selected. "Oh, this," she said, "really impressed me." She opened the file and took out a few sheets of paper, which she slid across the desk to me. I picked up the document and could not conceal my surprise. It was a photocopy of an article I'd written and published in Kunst magazine a few years back. I didn't know what to say. "It's a very intelligent essay," she said, "and it shows me that your attitude to art is in good harmony with the guiding principles of the Alger and Elizabeth Paddock's Museum." What she didn't know, and I hope she would never find out, is that I'd written the piece on a bet. When I worked at Sotting, South Kensington auction house, my fellow appraisers and I frequented a nearby pub called the Venus Arms. We'd drink beer, lots of beer, and discuss the day's work with decreasing coherence as the evening progressed. Favorite anecdotes usually centered on people showing up with mediocre Dutch copies of paintings they were sure were unknown Rembrandts, overjoyed at having found a priceless masterpiece in some backstreet junk shop. Or people brandishing childish squiggles on a canvas they'd found in a dustbin, declaring it to be an unknown Jackson Pollock. Anyway, one fine night we began poking fun at art critics and scholars and the impenetrable jargon they used. I rather drunkenly contended that anyone could line up any number of current art buzzwords, place them in a context of dubious rationality, and published a piece in any one of a number of art magazines. My mates and I were always betting on all sorts of things, and the more beer we imbibed, the weirder the bets got. We'd wager, for example, that the next person through the door was to be a tall blonde woman, or that someone could flick 20 bar nuts up into the air and straight into his or her mouth. So I laid out a wager and took up the challenge to write and publish the article. The very next day, nursing a rather nasty hangover, I began listing art buzzwords. Modern-day classics included wall power, flip art, spatial plasticity, spatiality, object reality, neo-anything, neo-dada, neo-expressionism, neo-neo, constructive nihilism, and the school of just about anywhere. School of New York, School of Prague, School of Berlin, and School of Hackney, or the tradition-busting School of Slough. The next step was to line up a number of nonsensical and yet grammatical sentences. Soon enough, I'd accumulated over 2,000 words of pure twaddle in an essay I entitled, "I know lots about art, but I don't know what I like," which I submitted to the newest, hottest, trendiest art magazine called Kunst. Any English-language publication with a foreign language name had to be super cool in an ironic, postmodern way. Excuse me. Within 30 days, I received an envelope from the magazine's New York editorial offices. They had accepted my article for publication, and I would soon receive a dozen copies in payment. I also made a tidy profit on the pub wager. And here I was, years later, sitting at the desk of the most powerful person in the art world, holding a photocopy of my crazy world. Excuse me. She's telling me how she admired them. Excuse me. So that's it for today, before I choke. And there'll be more coming shortly, next week. The title of the article is, I know a lot about art, but I don't know what I like. I'm toying with the idea of titling the whole novel, using that as the title for the novel. Yeah, I think that might work, actually. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I should publish this thing. Tell me if I should title it. I know a lot about art, but I don't know what I like. Anyway, so listen, thank you for visiting. Press the subscribe button if you wish. It would certainly make me happy. Send me comments. I love your comments. I got a comment the other day from someone telling me that he was reminded by my reading of Spike Milligan, and I took that as a very, very, very big compliment. Spike Milligan, in my opinion, was one of the funniest people on earth, along with Peter Cook, both of them, alas, deceased. Okay, so I'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye-bye.